Welcome back. Today we've got a rather extreme and pretty unexpected update to a story. Ultimately, here's the rub. $20 million and 5 years of work for 24 people have been thrown out of the window by Paradox Interactive. The life sim game, Life for You, is now completely cancelled. Yes, the game has been completely cancelled even though it was supposed to launch into early access 2 weeks ago. And this is obviously just the latest management disaster to come from Paradox Interactive. They have had, half a dozen disasters over the last 12 months alone. They have burned a hell of a lot of money, messed up a hell of a lot of games, and in this case, it is being handled pretty damn rough, really, by a team that doesn't seem to have the ability to plan for the long term, or to manage projects over the finish line. It's a wild story. We're going to get into it. It's a situation that sucks, and our ability to do ongoing coverage is funded in part by today's sponsor, us, specifically at Bellular.games, where we publish Loading Screen daily for our members. Now, Loading Screen is on our site. It also is in your inbox as a newsletter. And on Loading Screen, we cover games as they're coming out and loads of breaking stories, as well as things that we're not able to cover here on the main channel with videos. It's only be getting better and better as time goes on. I think it's a fantastic daily read to throw into your rotation, perhaps if you're taking the bus, reading over breakfast, that kind of thing. So if you want to give us a shot, you can consider a free trial over at Bellular.games and get Loading Screen. It's the single best way that you can actually support what we do. So a big thank you to everyone who is chipping in over there right now. With that said, let's get into the news. Life by You is a life sim that was being developed by Paradox Tectonic and published by Paradox Interactive, and it's now dead. 2 weeks ago, it was supposed to release into early access, and then it was indefinitely delayed a month ago, and now, of course, it has been cancelled. Paradox have taken a write-off of 208 million Swedish krona, which is about 20 million USD in development costs. So basically, 5 years, 24 people, $20 million. That's how much this project ended up costing them. Now, we first found out about this because of a investment site update. It was posted along with comments from the CEO, Frederick Wester, and I'm just going to read out what he said. For a long time, we've held hopes for Life for You and the potential we saw in it, but now it's clear the game will not be able to meet our expectations. A version that we'd be satisfied with is too far away, and therefore we are taking the difficult decision to cancel release. Moving forward, we should perform at a much higher level, and it's obvious that we have work ahead of us. We have performed poorly in recent releases. Even though we now start new projects in a different manner, it is clear that we must make further changes so the quality is more consistent and promises we make to our players are met. We have to evaluate how we manage projects and how we organize, for we will and must get better. We have a very solid financial position and a strong games portfolio, which keeps us confident about our future. So that's the comments from the CEO, and they're fairly obvious, right? Ultimately, it is no secret that some of their management here has been a shit show. Again, multiple messed up games. We'll go into that a little bit. Obviously, the one that most people know about, of course, is City Skylines 2. An amazing example of a game that had so much promise and where they had so much fundamentally pretty damn cool technology, but as an actual polished, well-balanced, well-tuned game experience, it was just shipped too early. Now, we also had another update. This comes from the deputy CEO, Matthias, who posted directly in the Paradox forums a few minutes later. And, it's a long enough message. He basically says to the players, this was a hard call. It won't meet our own expectations. It won't meet the players' questions. He says, we realize this raises some large questions, and he goes on to basically talk about why they opted to cancel rather than delay. He basically says it's been in the works for a long time and that they've been very excited about the promise and potential of the game. Now, that is, of course, very clearly speaking to The Sims. The Sims is absolutely massive. It's really what you would call a bit of a sleeper hit amongst our sort of audience. But of course, if you look around YouTube, The Sims does have a fairly large audience. It continues to perform well for EA, and for a lot of people, be it Power Lives, be it Life by You, they want some sort of competitor to The Sims that is not an EA product that perhaps has a different business model. In this case, though, it is a game that was altogether more ambitious than what The Sims is currently offering. Anyway, he basically said in this statement that they wanted it to be a good release. It's a new genre for them. That's why they've already delayed it twice, to give the studio as he characterizes it, a fair shot at realizing the potential we saw. Now, he then goes on to say that those delays saw incremental improvements, and he reflects in this saying that, in hindsight, maybe they were focusing too much on those details rather than the whole picture. So the idea that, like this, let's just say it's a building construction project, that the whole project is a total catastrophe, but hey, at least some really good plumbing work has been done on it. But obviously, that's not the point. You need a whole building for any of that to matter. He then goes on to detail the cancellation process. So here's what he said. A few weeks back, we decided to hold off an early access release in order to reevaluate Life by You, as we still felt it was lacking in some key areas, though time extension was an option. Once we took that pause to get a wider view of the game, it became clear to us that the road leading to a release that we felt confident about was too long and too uncertain. Again, 24 people, 208 million krona, $20 million. Evidently, they thought that that would be many more $1 million to actually get the game over the line. Now, he does say there was lots of hard work by a dedicated team. Of course, the killing line, though, is this. However, when we come to a point where we believe that more time will not get us close enough to a version that we would be satisfied with, then we believe it's better to stop. This is obviously tough and disappointing for everyone who poured their time and enthusiasm into the project, especially when the decision comes so late in the process. And they basically say their job is to release good games, right? Good games for their players. Every decision should be in line with that. He says, when we get that right, we earn our pay. Which is a pretty good statement because obviously they do get paid when it doesn't go right. The people who will no longer earn their pay are the people in the team who's just been shut down. So no, he will very much be paid. Just by his own words, he won't necessarily have earned it. They do talk, though, about basically hindsight, mistakes, and that kind of thing, but it is fairly waffly and lacking in key specifics. One thing you will note through all this communication, though, is it's Paradox leadership essentially owning the mistake. They are not putting blame on the developers of Life by You. They're pretty much talking about themselves and their management of the project. Now, that is good, and in between the fluffy talk, there are reflections here that I appreciate, right? That I think ultimately are fairly reasonable takes. Certainly, the management team will have to show an awareness because of all of their failures. Let's just rattle off a few. We have Lamplighters League, we have Star Trek Infinite, City Skylines 2, Prison Architect 2, there is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, whatever will happen with that, and of course now Life by You. Meaning, we are now at 6 games that have actively had troubled development or messy launches under Paradox Interactive. But I will note that Life by You does not top the write-off leaderboard here. The largest write-off was actually for Lamplighters League. 7 days after it released on Steam, they wrote down a $22.7 million loss. In this case, it's about $20 million. Either way, though, that is $40 million that have been pissed into the wind, but I suppose will likely be tax advantageous in some sort of way. The problem, quite clearly, is Paradox Interactive, because they are the common denominator across these projects. I will also say, through the grapevine, I have heard some things about how Paradox were generally running things, how they were treating some of their partner developers. I'm not going to be saying anything more there, but there are certainly a lot of people who would be quite critical of their project management strategy and also of some, pretty mercenary decision making. Now, that is kind of going a few years back, but it is very much all in the recent sort of tenure. So let's talk about this then. If this was just one or two Banjax projects, you could totally see that it's developers, right? That it's dev teams not really hitting their own targets. But when so many games have got problems, you then look at the publisher, and that's where things are interesting. So Frederick Wester was CEO of this company from 2008 to 2018, and then from 2021 to 2024, right? And he's not losing his job, by the way, so he's still the CEO. It was a fairly odd thing. Paradox basically, they had a new CEO after he left, and let's just say that not everything went fantastically under her tenure, and that was quite a story. Now, these people, Frederick as an example, he still has got his job, so that's great for him. Of course, Paradox Tectonic has been shut down. The studio is gone, and that does mean that they're another one that we can add to the list of game studios that have died this year. Even just I think 2 days ago, there was another indie studio that had died. We are still seeing a lot of studios go under. So first, let's dive into the development of Life by You. Let's talk about the wider market and then Paradox themselves. Life by You is a pretty damn ambitious game. It was announced announced in May of 2023 as a part of Paradox's push to have entries in loads of new genres and try to expand their audience. In a way, that does seem fair and reasonable. I think Paradox games are very notable for their very long session times. Whenever they do it right, they create, I suppose, franchises that have got an amazingly long tail, and that is absolutely fantastic for them as a publisher. It means their releases are not flashes in the pan, and it means that their development is a true investment in their future because these games have a long tail. So you can understand why they would want to do a lot of investment. They have really strong fundamentals. In this case, they wanted to dive into the life sim genre, and of course, when you think about loads of their games, they're effectively lovely big role-playing spreadsheets, which is awesome. In this case, though, it's a pretty granular and interactive role-playing spreadsheet. Now, it is an odd game. From its very announcement, it always did look like they were building cool things, but not necessarily, it didn't look amazing. So here's some footage of its launch trailer, and certainly looking at the footage, you can, I think, see that a lot of systems have been built, right? A lot of systems have been built. There's a lot of things that can happen, but I think the overall level of polish that is on display is pretty low. Now, that's obviously something I'm not going to be blaming the developer for. You're not going to polish a game at this stage of development. I think it does show, though, that this is the sort of game that could very much fall into a lot of bloat, right? So in The Sims, it is fairly locked down and controlled. Right? In this case, though, it's a sort of town sim. Now, it's not some American town of, 60,000 people and you can play them all. It is more of a, tiny little village, funny sort of scaled thing. The idea, though, is there are loads of NPCs. They're all living out their lives. You have got the super detailed building, and as a bit of a unique feature, you can just sort of control any character that you want. You can, control a character and go to the shops, just as if you're going to the shops in, a regular role-playing game, right? So you can essentially see there loads and loads and loads of features, and that would mean lots of technical development, right? So to do that, they built Paradox Tectonic, located in Berkeley, California. This happened 2019. That's obviously an extremely expensive place to do video games development, so if you're going to choose there, you better have a damn good reason. And I'd say it's pretty obvious. It's California. It is a big tech hub. It's a big games hub. Whenever you're doing a game like this that is highly detailed and ambitious, what you obviously need is a lot of talent. That's why this is a pretty damn major investment. And of course, why they burnt $20 million over the course of its development. Now, the team was actually built around Rod Humble. At one point, right, he was the executive producer of the entire Sims division of Electronic Arts, and then he was the CEO of Linden Labs. Linden Labs are the developer of Second Life, which is a bit of a odd, let's just say it's a strange relic of the internet, but one you can still log into and maybe see things you'd rather forget, because it is a crazy, crazy place. Anyway, they got a notable executive with a whole bunch of genre experience and also production experience. To be honest with you, seeing this, if you ask me to blind guess, I would say maybe you got a senior designer or something like that, where you could perhaps understand the bloat, but this was being ran by a producer. So really a case where there would not be that many people more qualified to do this job on a corporate scale, and this is especially because Mr. Humble has got experience in hands-on development himself. So it's not like he's some producer that doesn't actually know how the sausage is made. No, he's a producer with actual development experience. So what they were was pretty damn well set up to do a good job here. The thing is, though, none of this happens in isolation, and we do have to talk about the genre a little bit more broadly. So, there's Project Renee, aka The Sims 5. It is actually so far away from release that Electronic Arts have spent the last year revamping The Sims 4 into a free-to-play game. They've got, basically, they have daily retention techniques that people are kind of calling a battle pass, and they've also formed a strike team for fixing the core game experience. You don't do that if you think the new Sims game is going to be coming out next year, and there is a little bit of a reason. Games like this are extremely, extremely expensive to make, and in a way that I think is kind of unintuitive to a lot of customers. That's absolutely not customers' fault, of course. Basically, whenever you have lots of customization, lots of character customization, and things are really systemic, but they also have got to have a high level of fidelity, that is extremely challenging to pull off. Maybe it's a few clothing options in the mind of the person using them. To a developer, though, that could be loads of different assets that are all maybe hitting different body types, things like that, right? It's a lot of multiplicative stuff that just, the scope bloats and bloats and bloats and bloats. especially when it is so damn systemic. And this is a game that I think is systems driven. I don't want to say in a way that is unparalleled, but certainly more so than The Sims in how it was really trying to do basically a big real-time community simulation. That is damn hard. Another thing that makes a game like this extremely hard is polish. The problem in a situation like this is you have so many different variables that actually finding bugs, fixing problems is really hard. Testing is really hard. It's not like you can just load up a certain level in a test build and go and play it. No. It is hard to test. Of course, so much so that The Sims itself is even a very, very long way off, even though we believe that Project Renee has been under development for quite some time. And that's, of course, with a dedicated team that have been doing The Sims for ages and under EA, who have got many resources. Now, there are more games in the market. There is Paralives, quite the indie darling. Looks absolutely awesome. I mean, honestly, I just want to fire up Paralives so that I can, design some sets or, recreate my apartment, just because it's, it's just so good quality. What I've seen of basically of their building tools is truly astounding. Now, it's coming out 2025, and there were some concerns from onlookers, but they started showing off the life simulation elements of gameplay in February 2024, thankfully to a lot of praise. Next, then, we've got Nexon. Nexon have got plenty of money, and they've been throwing a lot at Inozi, which is basically them having Krafton build a Korean life sim, which, is just kind of trying to do all the different aspects of life and society. It is not scheduled until later this year, and when you look at it, I mean, my god, there is a level of detail and expense that is absolutely giant. So, if Life by You had have came out late last year, then it probably would have been perfect for Paradox. They would have beaten everyone else to the punch, and they would have had a game that, in terms of its ambition, the level of its simulation, was super impressive. Or at least was marketed to be super impressive. But obviously that didn't happen. Starting from the middle of last year, Paradox has problem and problem and problem. Now, months ago, whenever we saw those delays, honestly, in the media, loads of us were praising it. We basically said City Skylines 2 did not have to be like this. That team could have maybe cooked for another year, and we would have a far, far, far better situation. So we thought they were learning from that lesson and doing that for this team. Obviously, though, this team is now dead, and when I think about it, they probably realized that by the time Life by You was done, that, you'd have 2 or 3 other entrants into the genre, and likely the behemoth that is The Sims. And they likely thought, we have 24 people. If we don't have first mover advantage, how do we compete against The Sims, which will have a lot more than $20 million poured into it, because the create assets, sell assets, humongous machine is too damn strong for The Sims, and that's an embedded community. They've been playing that franchise for a long ass time. So without first mover advantage and a AAA level of polish, they were basically screwed. Now let's talk about corporate flux. I'll do this quickly. You may hear corporate and turn off, but trust me, this is actually where it's a little bit more spicy. This is where the drama is. Of course, I'm going to mangle a Scandinavian name as well. So, Paradox Tectonic was announced as being founded under the brief window where Paradox was under former CEO Ebba Lundgaard, I think, but basically she left in 2021 following disagreements in the overall direction of the company. Now, her era was, yes, it was having the likes of, Tectonic appearing, but also the whole thing that they tried to do with the subscriptions. Basically, people saying, hey, I have so many Crusader Kings bits of DLC, and there are so many Hearts of Iron in my computer that I have no more money left. What do I do? And also the problem of, for a new player, well, when you see that there's hundreds and hundreds of dollars of DLC, they get put off. So their plan was basically to do a subscription. That ended up not happening. It was a whole thing. But anyway, at the time then, she left and Frederick Wester came back, and that was basically hailed as a chance for the company to regain its footing after it had PR disasters. There was the sub thing, but also Imperator Rome, which, was basically a big old misfire, unfortunately. 3 years later, though, Frederick has had plenty of time to deal with missteps, and certainly a lot of these problems are going to be, happening under his lead, right? So with Life by You, it's not like that's a game that hasn't had plenty of planned marketing pushes. There's been pre-orders in the Epic Games Store that had to be refunded, and just more stuff in 2023 to 2024. When you actually look at the trailers for this game, it did look pretty rough. Even the way that they had to edit the trailers, to me, felt like it was kind of just editing around the bits that weren't really complete or polished yet. And that just says to me that this is a time bomb that has been sitting with Paradox management for a long, long time. So from a public relations point of view, why would you do it like this? If we never heard about the game and then the studio was closed because basically internal milestones weren't met and it wasn't looking like a winner, there would not be as much drama. In this case, though, there was enough for people to get emotionally latched onto, and that just does so much more damage to your brand and damage to people's level of faith in your company, and that will actually, well, that'll hit people's purchasing decisions, especially because they make platform games that are basically designed for DLC and continuous support. So if a player doesn't really have faith in them, are they going to buy in? Because a lot of the buy-ins to Paradox games are kind of based on the expectation of future growth and development for that sandbox. This makes financial sense for Paradox. This was a small and expensive team, sure. That makes sense. If Paradox does not plan on doing a life sim game, why still have a team completely set up to make life sim games? I understand that. The bit here that is cruel and mismanaged is not that a project failed and that a team is being shut down. That sort of thing happens, sometimes plans don't work out, and that's just the way of life. The thing here, though, is Paradox setting a timeline for release that was nigh impossible in reality, the devs still trying as hard as they could to manage that, and basically being nudged along from milestone to milestone to milestone, getting these delays, and only after all of that pain, then being shut down. Because just over a month ago, Paradox thought this game was worth publishing, and now they do not. So fundamentally, what's going on with their management? And I would say, based on my read of this story, based on talking to fellow developers who have had interesting publisher relationships, I would say that often pressure comes from the top, right? That's it, it goes downhill. But the people at the top are not on the front line. And one of the things that is a recipe for your company to basically get even more stupid as it scales, because getting more stupid as you scale is what happens by default, and talent dilutes, right? But what can make that the worst is if your management team are not near any frontline development, because that means they will be out of touch. That means that for a manager, for somebody at the corporate level, they will say, okay, well, we believe in quality, and all these people in my team, they're telling me that this game needs more time in the oven. Okay, I'll listen to them. Let's give them a delay. The thing is, maybe if that person was a little bit more understanding of what the on-the-ground development situation was like, and was a little bit more embedded earlier on in the process, then they would probably be more in touch, and maybe this project would have been killed earlier so that it would have ultimately resulted in less damage, or perhaps it would have been guided in a different direction, maybe a decrease in scope, so that it could be achievable. Now, we were already planning on doing Paradox coverage because Spheres of Influence is coming out on 24th of June. That's a DLC for Victoria 3, and it is very much one of those do or die situations where really it will have to restore quite a lot of trust with its audience. And in a way, over the last 6 months, we have seen Paradox be pretty happy to give their developers more time, likely learning from the City Skylines 2 debacle. So in the case of Victoria 3, it does seem like it would be particularly insane to not give those developers the time, because in this case, it's not a new project with a new audience, it is a very important project with your very dedicated existing audience. Those are the people who are your bread and butter, who you cannot fail and let down. The co-CEO said that whenever they release good content, that is them earning their pay. Of course, remember, they will get paid regardless. Who won't are the developers, so let us see how they choose to manage these projects. Definitely one of those groups to look out for. Funny enough for them, I think this is a case of management being too caught up in grand strategy. Because the thing is, if you're playing Hearts of Iron or something like that, yes, you're moving armies about on the map, but guess what? You're not doing the actual fighting. Sometimes you can be very focused on grand strategy, on these big moves, but it perhaps turns out that while you're focused on the strategic layer, the operational layer and the tactical layer are letting you down. Whenever the people doing grand strategy do not understand what is happening on the operational and the tactical level, that is when big mistakes like this happen, because the people who are steering the ship don't actually know how well the ship is working, and they may not even know, as an example, are they going in the right direction. That's it for this video. If you want to support our team, you can check out our sponsor at the link below. Other than that, take care, let me know how these games go for you, and we'll be back tomorrow.